أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، ولا عاقبة للمتقين ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم عبد الله ورسوله. ما بعد. We thank the Almighty Allah for giving us another opportunity to be here. We thank Him for His mercies that He's bestowed upon us. We bear witness that there is no deity worthy of worship except the Almighty Allah. We also bear witness that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is His servant and His messenger. Whosoever the Almighty Allah guides is really guided, and anybody who goes astray has nobody to blame but themselves. Today is a Sunday, the 19th day of Muharram, 1445 years after the hijrah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which also corresponds, I believe, with the 6th day of August 2023. We are still in our Sirah class. Today is the 24th episode. The last episode we spoke about the Islam of Umar, Umar's acceptance of Islam, and at the latter part of that class we decided to speak about Umar bin Khattab himself in the next episode. Because, as we said, studying the Sirah is a pathway for us towards success. And the major stakeholders in the Sirah, apart from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Sahaba, anytime we get to the point where we need to have a little in-depth discussion about them, I believe it is worth it for us to look at the life of someone like Umar bin Khattab and then see what made him Umar bin Khattab. Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu is a unique personality, and some of the scholars are saying that the likeness of Umar bin Khattab has not been repeated even in humanity, not even in the Ummah, itself. And for those of us who take Umar as our role models, it's a very difficult job, going through the footsteps of Umar bin Khattab. I'm not saying this to discourage you, no, don't get me wrong. But I just want us to be up for it, because Umar bin Khattab was on a whole different level. What are we going to look about the Umar? Is it his justice? Or is it his knowledge? Or is it his understanding? Or is it his power? Or is it his sympathy towards the weak? There is a hadith that has been narrated that one day Umar bin Khattab was walking through the streets of Medina at night. That is when he was a Khalifa. And then he saw fire kindling from a distance. He got closer and then he realized it was a woman who was cooking. And then he asked her, "What are you doing?" She said, "I'm cooking." "What are you cooking?" She said, "I'm a widow and these kids are my orphans. And what I have on the fire is just a pot with water and stones in there. The kids will think I'm cooking food for them. They will wait for the cook. They will anticipate the food to be ready, but it will not be ready, and then they will fall asleep like that." And then he asked her, "What is your greatest complaint?" She said, Allah fi Umar. Ayali amrana wa yaghfal anna. My problem is with Umar bin Khattab. Will he be our leader but then forget about us? She didn't know who she was even speaking to. Umar bin Khattab said, when she said that statement, Allah fi Umar, my cry is with Umar bin Khattab. Will he be our leader and then forget about us? He said it felt as if a spear had been thrust into his heart. And then he told her, wait. He rushed to the storehouse, the bank of the Ummah. And then he told the security guy there, "Give me a bag of this, give me a bag of that, give me a bag of that." And Umar was trying to juggle all these bags on his back. And then the security guy was like, "Amir al-Mu'mineen, let me help you with it." He said, "Hey, will you carry my sins for me on the day of Qiyamah?" He said, "No." He said, "Then let me carry my stuff." Umar bin Khattab carried this stuff to the woman. He cooked for them. Even in cooking for them, sometimes some ash, from the fire on his beard, and then one of the kids will come and, clean and then rub it off. Umar cooked for them. He served them. And then when he was about to leave, she said, Anta ahaqqu bil khilafati bin Umar. You deserve to be the Khalifa and not that Umar bin Khattab. Up to now, he didn't tell her who he was. He was with his friend Abdurrahman bin Auf. And then they went at a distance. And Abdurrahman bin Auf said, Ya Amir al-Mu'minin, hayya bina al-bard al-shadid. Amir al-Mu'minin, it's winter, it's cold, let's go home. Umar bin Khattab said, I came seeing them crying. I want to leave when they are happy and then they are smiling. This is some part of Umar bin Khattab. His sympathy towards people who are weak. In another narration of Umar bin Khattab, in a hot summer in the Arabian desert, he was found running by Uthman bin Affan. Uthman bin Affan saw a man coming from a distance running. And then he looked and he said, Amir al-Mu'mineen, what has brought you out of this heat? He said, Ibilum min sadaqah. Part of the camels that have been brought for sadaqah and zakat has run away. And I'm chasing it to bring it back. And then Uthman said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, why don't you come into the shade here with me? I have some nice cold water for you. And then you let some of your agents, your workers, your employees go around looking for the camel for you, and then you relax. You are Amir al-Mu'mineen. He said, Uthman, go back to your shade and go back to your ice cold water. You are not the one who will be questioned on the day of Qiyamah concerning these camels. So go back there. I have a job to do. This is where Umar bin Khattab is when it comes to accountability. Umar bin Khattab was born in Mecca, but he was nurtured and raised by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If I say he was nurtured and raised by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, let's understand the context. He was taught and nurtured and refined by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Imam al-Tirmidhi narrates a hadith from Abdullah ibn Umar, where the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Inna Allah Ta'ala ajra al-haqq ala lisani Umar wa qalbi." The Almighty Allah has made a pathway of truth on the tongue and on the heart of Umar bin Khattab. If Umar bin Khattab does not have any award from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam except this statement, it is enough for him. That the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself has given the guarantee, the emphasis that Umar bin Khattab, it is the truth that is coming out of his mouth and in his heart. For us to emphasize this, Umar bin Khattab one day told the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "Halla nattakhidha min maqami Ibrahim musalla." Ya Rasulullah, can't we, have 2 rakats at Maqam Ibrahim? Can't we do that? Maqam Ibrahim is a very special place. Why don't we have 2 rakats at Maqam Ibrahim? And then the Almighty Allah reveals a verse emphasizing what Umar bin Khattab said. And Almighty Allah said, وَاتَّخِذُوا مِن مَقَامِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ مُصَلَّى. That hold Maqam Ibrahim, hold that place as a place of 2 units of rakah. In another hadith, in Surah Al-Mu'minun, when the Almighty Allah is describing the creation of a human being from semen to blood to this, and when the verse was revealed, Umar bin Khattab was the one who was called by the Prophet to come and write the verse. He said, فَتَبَارَكَ اللَّهُ, the greatest of the greatest. And then the Prophet Muhammad said, "Yeah, Umar, what you said, write it, because that is the latter part of the verse." Umar bin Khattab's statement matches sometimes with the verses of the Quran. In another narration, the Prophet Muhammad had his wives sit with him, and sometimes some of the Sahaba come around, and Umar bin Khattab realized that some munafiqeen were spying and peeping at the wives of the Prophet Muhammad and Umar bin Khattab said, "Ya Rasulullah, hajjib nisa'ak." Ya Rasulullah, put a partition between us and your wives. There are some guys who come here, I don't like them, I don't like the vibe around them. And Almighty Allah revealed. There are a lot of examples when it comes to Umar bin Khattab's, the right word, having, the right coincidence with the Quran in the statement of Umar bin Khattab. Imam Bukhari and Muslim narrate a hadith from Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu. He says, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, لَقَدْ كَانَ فِي مَنْ كَانَ قَبْلَكُمْ مِنَ الْأُمَمِ نَاسٍ. Amongst the people who came before you, there are some special people amongst them, muhaddathun, mulhamun. They are inspirational people. And if anybody is going, and those people are not prophets. Amongst the nations that came before us, there are people within them who are inspirational people who received inspiration from the Almighty Allah without them being prophets. And the Prophet Muhammad said, if there is going to be anybody like that in my ummah, there is going to be Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu. There is a hadith attributed to Imam Ali radiallahu anhu, where Ali radiallahu anhu slept in a dream and then he saw the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It was time for Fajr, they prayed, and Ali was leaving the Masjid, and a woman came with a bowl with some dates in there. And then she told him, Ali, can you give these dates to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? So Ali took the bowl to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ya Rasulullah, it's a woman who said, this is a gift to you. He said, no problem. And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam took some and then he gave Ali some. Ali took the first bite. After finishing the first date, he wanted, and it was time for Fajr. During the time of one, Umar told him, if the Prophet had given you, I will give you another one. Mulhamun, Umar bin Khattab. And some of the Sahaba had that. One day, Uthman bin Affan was sitting in his class, and a man came in. And Uthman was like this, I smell the scent of zina. And the guys were like, you smell the scent of zina? He said, yes. And one man said, yeah, Amir al-Mu'minin, I didn't do anything. I only touched her hand. These are the true awliya of the Almighty Allah. And they didn't run around boasting about it. No. It's something that the Almighty Allah has given them. Another hadith. Abu Hurairah narrates, and Imam Bukhari and Muslim give us this narration that the Prophet Muhammad said, بَيْنَمَا أَنَا نَائِمٌ رَأَيْتُنِي فِي الْجَنَّةِ. One day I was asleep. That's what the Prophet Muhammad said. In a dream, رَأَيْتُنِي فِي الْجَنَّةِ, and I saw myself in Jannah. And the Prophet Muhammad saw the Jannah reality, real, when he went for Isra al-Mi'raj. And then he saw Jannah whilst he was in the dunya. The hadith of Salatul Istisqa, the salah of seeking for rain, the Prophet Muhammad went with the Sahaba outside Medina to do Salatul Istisqa. And the Sahaba saw him, stretch his hands as if he wanted to pluck something, and then he came back. After Salah, they asked, Ya Rasulullah, we saw you stretch your hands. What's going on? He said, I saw Jannah, and I saw some of its fruits, and I wanted to pluck some of the fruits, but I remember I'm in the dunya, so as not to confuse you guys. That is why I stopped. So the Prophet Muhammad saw Jannah in the dunya, he saw Jannah in reality, and then he saw Jannah in his dream. So in this dream, he said, I saw myself in Jannah, and I saw a huge castle, and there was a young woman in front of the castle, and then she was performing wudu. And I asked, whose castle is this? And I was told, this is the castle of Umar bin Khattab. And then he said, and I remembered your strong jealousy, Umar bin Khattab. So I turned my face away from the woman. Even in the dream, the Prophet Muhammad is concerned about the sha'air, the rules and regulations of the Almighty Allah. And even in the dream, the Prophet Muhammad is concerned about other people's feelings. You know very well that if someone is looking at your wife in a way, you wouldn't like it. And it is part of our ghira. It's part of our ghira as men. Protective jealousy is part of our ghira. We've gotten to a time whereby Muslim men have lost that protective jealousy. So his wife or his daughters can dress anyhow and go around the street, and then he doesn't care. It's okay, it's fine. Oh, dear Americans, we live in the 21st century. They will understand. No, we don't need to. You don't need to pressure them. We don't need to know. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu qu anfusakum wa ahlikum an-nar. Protect yourselves and your families from the hellfire. The Prophet Muhammad said, "Kullukum ra'i wa kullukum mas'ulun an ra'iyatihi." All of us are shepherds, and the Almighty Allah is going to question us again concerning the flock that He gave us. So that is why it's very, very important when you are getting married, you go to a home, not a house. to look for your wife. The house is the building. The home is the ideology in the house. So you can have a lot of houses, but they are not homes. So it's very, very important that you order your families, especially the wives, to have that clothing. That is their identity. And the Sharia is very clear about that. And you're not being an extremist if you implement that law in your house. Because it is not your law, it's the law of the Almighty Allah. That women must be in hijab. That is who we are. We've gotten to a time whereby, with all due respect, the woman's body has been commercialized. Is that it's sexually commercialized, that anything that happens in the dunya now, it is related with a woman who is naked. I don't understand this. Boxing, even boxing. Men punching themselves. Round one, a woman in bikini comes with a placard. What's the relationship between the punching of the faces and the naked woman? But all this is being done in the name of women empowerment, independent, strong, free. No. May Almighty Allah safeguard us. When the Prophet Muhammad narrated these incidents in a dream, Umar bin Khattab wept. He said, Awa minka agharu ya Rasulullah. Say, Ya Rasulullah, will I have jealousy towards you, Ya Rasulullah? I can't do that. Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, also in another narration from Bukhari and Muslim, said, the Prophet Muhammad in another dream again, he said, I saw people pass in front of me in a dream, and they had shirts on. Some of them had shirts to the chest, and some of them had shirts that were dragging, were on the lower part. And Umar bin Khattab came in a shirt that was dragging on the floor. It's as if he was sweeping the floor. Guys, let's understand this. Don't misunderstand the hadith to say that since Umar bin Khattab was seen in a dream by the Prophet Muhammad, so you let your clothes drag on the floor. No. Sometimes people misunderstand a hadith. When the Prophet Muhammad was asked for the meaning of this dream, he said, ad-deen, the religion. Umar bin Khattab's religion is very strong. That is why he saw him in a dream and his clothes were dragging on the floor. But then, in our day-to-day activities, ما أسفل من الكعبين من الإزار ففي النار. Anything that drags the floor in clothing from men, from the authentic hadith, is problematic. It is only the women that are allowed their dress, their abaya, to what? To drag on the floor. Even if it passes through najis, and then it passes through on sand, and then it dries up, it is still clean. That is for them. But for you and I, keep it up above the ankle. May Almighty Allah safeguard us. Another hadith from Bukhari and Muslim. This time around again, another dream. The Prophet Muhammad said, I saw myself in the dream. I was drinking from a cup. I was drinking milk from a cup. And I drank to the extent that I could feel the wetness of the milk from my fingers. And then after I drank, I gave some to Umar bin Khattab. And then the Sahaba asked, Ya Rasulullah, what do you interpret the dream to mean? He said, Al-ilmu, knowledge. Knowledge. Another hadith by Bukhari and Muslim again, from Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, the Prophet Muhammad said, one day in a dream, I was near a well with a bucket, and I was drawing water from the well. And then Abu Bakr came to help me, and then he pulled 2 buckets from the well, 2 weak pullings. He struggled to pull 2 buckets weakly. And then, may Almighty Allah forgive him. And then Umar bin Khattab came, and then he took the bucket from Abu Bakr, and then he drew water. He drew and drew and drew and drew more water. And I've never seen anybody as intelligent and as smart as Umar bin Khattab. Let's not mistake this hadith to mean that Umar bin Khattab is better than Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu. No. Ya'ballahu wa Rasul. Abu Bakr Siddiq is better than Umar bin Khattab. From the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Amr bin As, when he became a Muslim, the Prophet Muhammad instantly made him a commander of the army. They were going to war. After they came back from the war, Amr ibn As was a little bit too happy. He was well over the moon. He thought that the Prophet Muhammad loved him more than anybody else. So he came to it. He wanted to confirm. He said, Ya Rasulullah, man ahabbu nasi ilayk? Who do you love the most in the world? Without thinking, the Prophet said, Aisha. And Amr said, okay, I get it. That's a woman. What about the men? He said, Abuha, her father. He said, who next? He said, Umar. And Amr said, after that, he mentioned some other names that was not part. So Amr ibn As realized that because he had a special ability, that is why the Prophet Muhammad made him the leader of the army, not because he loved him more than anybody else. And Ahabbun Nas ila Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam is Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu. The scholars of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah interpreted this hadith to mean that the 2 draws of water by Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu meant the 2 years and 6 months that he became Khalifa. And then the drawings of Umar with those power and might, they interpreted it to mean the 10 years and 6 months that Umar ibn Khattab did as Amir al-Mu'mineen. And obviously you know that the 2 years and 10 years are not comparable in terms of the successes job, in terms of what was achieved in there. But then in terms of status and position, Umar ibn Khattab said, Laytani kuntu sha'ran ala jasadika ya Abi Bakr. Ya Abu Bakr. He said, Abu Bakr, I wish I was like a hair on your body, O Abu Bakr Siddiq. And Umar ibn Khattab said, Laylatun ma Abi Bakr afdal min Umar wa Ali Umar. One night, Abu Bakr Siddiq's one night is better than Umar and the family of Umar. What does it mean? It means the nights that Abu Bakr spent during Hijrah with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam never had time alone with one person for that length except Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu. May Almighty Allah safeguard us. Another hadith before we move on. Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas narrates a hadith that is reported by Bukhari and Muslim that Umar ibn Khattab came to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then some women were with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, some women from Quraysh. They have come to visit the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The moment, and then they were talking and making noise and chit-chatting even in front of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So brothers, if the women come around and then they are doing their stuff, they did it to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Just chill. So the moment they heard Umar say Assalamu alaikum, they started scattering and finding a place to hide. And then Umar entered and he found the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam laughing. And he said, Adhaka Allahu sinnaka ya Rasulullah. Out of respect, he couldn't ask the Prophet, Ya Rasulullah, why are you laughing? He only said, may Almighty Allah make you laugh more, Ya Rasulullah. In that comment, there's a question. And the Prophet said, Umar, I'm astonished at these women. They were with me here, speaking, talking, doing their own thing. But the moment they heard you, they're all rushing, trying to find a spot to hide. That is why I'm laughing. And Umar turned to them. Oh, you enemies of your own selves. It is the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that you're supposed to respect more and be shy of, not me, Umar ibn Khattab. And when sometimes when you attack them, they defend back. They said, Umar, that isn't why we have all this freedom with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, the Prophet understands that, but you are rough. You are tough. You do not give space. Your face is always like this. You don't give us space. But the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam has this, time for us. That is why we are with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in that way. And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Umar ibn Khattab, understand one thing. Even when shaitan is coming and you are on the pathway, shaitan will look for another way. So how much more these women? So understand them. Fast forward. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam dies. And the whole ummah is in a panic. The whole ummah is in shock. Umar ibn Khattab draws his sword and says, anybody who says the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is dead, he's going to chop their head off. At that time, Abu Bakr Siddiq was in his other house, in the outskirts of Medina. Then he had the information that there's a possibility that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had died. But he had left him last night, beaming with smiles, and he was fine. So Abu Bakr rushed into, Medina, went to the masjid because the house of the Prophet is next to the masjid, and then he saw people gathered, crowd. And Umar ibn Khattab standing there with his sword. Abu Bakr Siddiq didn't mind him. He just cut through the people, entered into the room of Aisha, and then he found the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ really dead. He kissed his forehead, and then he said, the death that the Almighty Allah had made incumbent upon you, you've tasted it, and there's no other death after this one. And the Prophet Rasulullah, he said, hayyan wa mayitan ya Rasulullah. You're clean and pure in life and even in death. So the Abu Bakr Siddiq came out of the room, and the people saw that he wanted to speak to them. So they all left Umar and they came to the Prophet. They come to Abu Bakr Siddiq, and Abu Bakr Siddiq said, "Man kana ya'budu Muhammadan, fa inna Muhammadan qad mat." Anybody who worships Muhammad, Muhammad is dead today. وَمَنْ كَانَ يَعْبُدُ اللَّهَ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ حَيٌّ لَا يَمُوتُ. And anybody who worships the Almighty Allah is alive and then he never dies. And then he read the verse, وَمَا مُحَمَّدٌ إِلَّا رَسُولٌ قَدْ خَلَتْ مِنْ قَبْلِهِ الرُّسُلُ أَفَإِنْ مَاتَ أَوْ قُتِلَ انقَلَبْتُمْ عَلَىٰ أَعْقَابِكُمْ وَمَنْ يَنْقَلِبْ عَلَىٰ عَقِبَيْهِ فَلَنْ يَضُرَّ اللَّهَ شَيْئًا وَسَيَجْزِي اللَّهُ الشَّاكِرِينَ. That Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is but a messenger, and messengers have come before him. So if he dies today or he is being killed, will you renegade and then turn away? Umar ibn Khattab said it felt as if that was the first time he was hearing that verse. But the verse had been revealed before. So in that state, now that the people have really accepted that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was dead, and then his close relations like Ali and Aqil and Abbas and the rest were preparing the body for janazah, then a problem erupted. The people of Medina decided to choose a leader amongst them, because the community no longer has a leader. So Abu Bakr and Umar and Abu Ubaidah Amir ibn Jarrah were there, and then a man came and said, "Ya Abu Bakr, get up and save the Ummah. There is a meeting by the Ansar in Thaqifat Bani Sa'ida. They're trying to choose a leader." So Abu Bakr and Umar and Abu Ubaidah, they got up and then they went there. The guy that the Ansar wanted to be the leader, even that day, had been struck by malaria. He was there under the shade, they were trying to make him the leader, and then he is even thinking of his health. So Abu Bakr, when they got there, Umar wanted to speak. Abu Bakr saw the tension that was there, and Umar, Umar doesn't play. He's a punchy guy. So Abu Bakr just signaled to him that, don't talk, I'm going to do the talking. Then he said, Ya Ma'ashara al-Ansar, O people of Ansar, it is true, you are the helpers of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You are the helpers of the Almighty Allah. The Almighty Allah gave you the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and you did your best. You are the first of nations outside Mecca to accept the deen. But then you know very well that the people of Mecca, the Muhajirin, are the ones closest to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they are the ones who must take over this leadership. And you know very well that the Arabs will not accept any leadership outside Quraysh. He said, "Oh Ansar, we the Muhajirin will be the leaders, and then you will be the ministers." And then Bashir ibn Sa'ad, the father of Nu'man ibn Bashir, said, "Oh Quraysh, oh Ansar, people of Medina, we are the first people to accept the deen outside these people of Mecca. Let's not be the first people to also cause confusion in the deen. The people next to Muhammad, his family, his friends, the people he grew up with, the people who are the forefront of the deen, who suffered for the deen, are the ones who are supposed to be the leaders. I will never ever support any leadership outside of them." So Abu Bakr had Umar on one side, and he had Abu Ubaidah on the other side, and then he lifted their hands. He said, "These two men, I propose them as the leaders. Choose one of them." This is Umar ibn Khattab, and this is Abu Ubaidah, Amin Hadi al-Ummah. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam termed him the trustee of this ummah. And Umar said, "Ya Abu Bakr, how can we be leaders when you are around? It's not possible. if the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam made you our leader in salah. Because the days that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sick, he made Abu Bakr to lead the prayer. And Aisha said, Ya Rasulullah, Abu Bakr is a weak man. He is going to be crying in the salah. The Prophet said, Ya Abdullah, it's Abu Bakr who is going to lead the prayer. One day, Abu Bakr was absent. Bilal went to call the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in for salah, and the sickness was so severe, the Prophet couldn't come out. He told them, Murru Abu Bakr falyusalli bin nas. Tell Abu Bakr to lead people in salah. Bilal came into the masjid looking, and then he couldn't find Abu Bakr. So he said, Umar, Bismillah. The moment Umar said, Allahu Akbar, the Prophet heard his voice and he said, Ya Abdullah wa Rasul. The Almighty Allah does not agree with this. And the Prophet doesn't agree with this. When they finished, he asked them, where is Abu Bakr? They said, Abu Bakr was nowhere to be found. That is why Umar led the salah. So Umar said, if the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam has trusted you with leadership of the deen in salah, why can't we trust you with our political affairs? So they all, gave the allegiance to Abu Bakr Siddiq. And after 2 years and 6 months, Abu Bakr Siddiq took ill. Then he realized it was time. So he called Uthman. He said, Uthman, come, and this is a paper. Write my last will. He said, this is what Abu Bakr is leaving behind as his last job in the dunya, his first job in the akhirah. That I have appointed Umar bin Khattab as your leader. With Abu Bakr Siddiq, he didn't do any mashwara. He didn't bring any committee to discuss anything with anybody. No. He appointed Umar bin Khattab as the leader. And then he said, Ya Allah, when you ask me on the day of Qiyamah, why did I make Umar the leader after me? I will tell you, Ya Allah, I found him to be the best amongst them. And if I am right, it's because of my suspicion about him that he's someone who can do the job. But if I'm wrong, I'm a human being and I seek your forgiveness. He didn't even consult Umar in the action. He didn't tell Umar anything. Umar only later heard that he had been appointed by Abu Bakr to be the Khalifa. And then he went to Abu Bakr and said, Abu Bakr Siddiq, I don't want it. He said, yes. It's because you don't want it, that is why I gave it to you. And the Prophet Muhammad said, anybody who comes to you seeking leadership, don't give it to him. And you didn't come seeking, so I gave it to you. After the death of Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu, Umar bin Khattab mounted the mimbar to give a khutbah. And I want us to go through the khutbah. It will give us a clear understanding of who Umar bin Khattab is. He said, Ayyuhan nas, O you people, balagani anna an-nasa habu shiddati. I have received information that some of you are scared of my roughness. Wa khafu ghilzati. And some of you are also scared of my discipline. وقالوا, and they said, قد كان عمر يشتد علينا ورسول الله بين أظهرنا. Umar had been harsh on us even when the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was alive. واشتد علينا ثم اشتد علينا وأبو بكر والينا دونه. He was also harsh on us when Abu Bakr was the Khalifa. Okay, now that everything is in his hands now, what is going to happen? When the Prophet was alive, strong. Abu Bakr, strong. Now that he is the leader, what is going to happen? And then he said, فَعَلَمُوا أَيُّهَا النَّاسِ. Oh people, understand one thing. إِنَّ تِلْكَ الشِّدَّةُ قَدْ ضُعِفَتْ. That roughness has been doubled now. The roughness that you're complaining about has been doubled. وَلَكِنَّهَا إِنَّمَا تَكُونُ عَلَى أَهْلِ الظُّلْمِ وَالتَّعَدِّ عَلَى الْمُسْلِمِينَ. But then the doubling of the roughness is on those who are oppressors, those who are transgressors, those who oppress the Muslims. فَأَمَّا أَهْلُ السَّلَامَةِ وَالدِّينِ وَالْقَصْدِ فَأَنَا أَلْيَمُ إِلَيْهِمْ مِنْ بَعْضِهِمْ لِبَعْضٍ. He said, but those people who are peaceful people, who love the deen, I'm going to be softer to them than they are with each other. وَاللَّهِ لَسْتُ عَدَى أَحَدًا يَعْتَدِي أَوْ يَظْلِمْ أَحَدًا إِلَّا وَسَعَضَهُ خَدَّهُ عَلَى الْأَرْضِ لِيَضَعَ قَدَمِي عَلَى الْخَدِّ الْآخَرِ. And all those people who are transgressors, I'm going to put his cheek on the ground and then use my leg to step on the other cheek. If you transgress, and go against the law and oppress Muslims, I'm going to put one of your cheeks on the ground and I'll put my leg on that other cheek. But those people who are good people, who will love the deen, I'm rather going to put my cheek on the ground for them to step on it. And understand that whatever taxes you give to me, you're going to see the development of those taxes. And whatever we go to war and then we get a war booty, you're going to get your share of it. And I'll make sure I'm going to protect the borders of the Ummah. You think this is someone who is running for president? No. This is someone who is already the Khalifa. This is not political talk. This is someone who really means what he's going to do, and then he did that. Because Umar ibn Khattab, during his time, there was a registry. And there were pension payments during the time of Umar ibn Khattab. And the pension payments were not only for Muslims, they were for non-Muslims too. Jews and Christians in Medina, in the Islamic states, were receiving pension payments from Umar ibn Khattab. Umar ibn Khattab was in Medina and then he saw an old man begging. Umar said, begging in Medina, when we have all this risk, all these openings that the Almighty Allah has given us. Umar came to him, why are you begging? He said, I'm a Jewish man and I've paid all my taxes in my youthful age. I'm now an old man, I have nobody to take care of me. Umar ibn Khattab said, there is no good in us when we suck out everything from him when he's a young man, and then as an old man we leave him on the streets of Medina begging. No. He said, Ya Aslam, oh my servant, make sure this old man and people like him receive monthly allowances from what? From the Bayt al-Mal. One day Umar ibn Khattab told one of his friends, Abdurrahman ibn Auf, he said, I can see a trade caravan traveling and they've camped outside Medina. Let's go and guard them. Amir al-Mu'mineen, the head of the Ummah, going to serve as a security man for a trade caravan who didn't have a place to lodge in Medina, so they are lodging outside Medina. He said, let's go and protect them. So when he was protecting them, it was not as if he was asleep or he was standing guard. No, he was in Salah at the same time. And then he heard a baby cry. After Salah, he told the mother, Askiti, can you make the baby keep quiet? The second time, he said, can you make the baby quiet? The third time, he said, what kind of mother are you? You know Umar ibn Khattab, he doesn't tolerate something. What kind of mother are you? I've been telling you to keep the baby quiet and the baby is still crying. What's going on? She said, Umar ibn Khattab, the Amir al-Mu'mineen, doesn't give allowances to kids, meaning he gives child support too. He doesn't give allowances to kids unless they are weaned from breastfeeding. So the women were in a haste to wean the kids off breastfeeding so that they can get the allowances from the Bayt al-Mal. So that was affecting the growth of the kids, and some of them were even dying. And Umar burst into tears. He said, Umar ibn Khattab, what a wicked man are you? How many of the Muslim kids have you killed because of this bad policy? That night, there was an amendment. Every kid from the day that they're being born, they're going to receive child support from the Bayt al-Mal al-Muslimin, irrespective of whether their fathers are alive or not. Umar ibn Khattab instituted a registry. Umar ibn Khattab instituted a post office where he was sending letters to his Umara, to his governors. One day he came to Hajj and then he found one of his governors in Hajj. He said, what are you doing here? Aren't you supposed to be there? He said, yes, Amir al-Mu'mineen, I've also come for Hajj. Okay. Who did you leave behind as your substitute? He said, I've forgotten the name of the guy. Something Abu, something like that. And Umar asked him, okay, is he amongst the nobility or is amongst, the low-class citizens? And then the guy said, he is amongst the low-class citizens. And Umar said, how did you make a low-class person the leader of the community? He said, Amir al-Mu'mineen, he knows the Quran more than everybody else. So he deserves to be the leader. That is why. And Umar said, yes. The Prophet Muhammad said, the Almighty Allah is going to lift some people with this Quran, and some people will be brought down because of this Quran. So Umar ibn Khattab had all this. And then he told them, after I put the protection within the state and put protection on the borders of the state, when I send you to wars, I'm going to be the fathers of your kids back home in Medina. So if you read the history of Umar ibn Khattab, he single-handedly destroyed the Persian and then the Roman empires. He destroyed them. The Persian Empire had been in existence for more than 1,000 years before Islam of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Umar ibn Khattab just broke them down. That is why you find out modern day Shia in Iran have a problem with Umar ibn Khattab. It's part of the problems they have with Umar ibn Khattab. The descendants of Iran from the Persian, Umar is part of the problem they have with Umar. Umar was the one who destroyed that empire. So what Umar ibn Khattab did was that if he sends you to war, he is the one who goes grocery for your families. So he tells the woman, send your kids to the Masjid with the baskets, and then he goes with them to the marketplace to do the grocery for them, and then he sends them home. One day Umar ibn Khattab was going in the streets of Medina at night, and then he heard a woman, saying some poetry. And then she said, "Tatawala al-layl waswadda jawanibuhu." The night has been long and very dark. Laytani ma'i habibi ula'ibuhu. I wish I had my lover with me so that we play together. She said, "Wallahi lawla Allah." She said, "Wallahi, if not for Allah, la hurrika hadha as-sariru min jawanibi." This bed would have been shaking tonight. Umar, when he heard this, he said, this is a very dangerous statement. So he rushed to his daughter, Hafsa. He said, "Hafsa, I want to ask you a question. How long can a woman stay without her husband?" She said, "Daddy, what kind of question is this? It's not only serious business. How long can a woman stay without her husband?" She said, 4 months. She said, that woman, her husband has been to war for close to 6 months. That's the problem. That night, he wrote a letter to the commander to return him back. And then he instituted a policy. Nobody goes to jihad fi sabilillah more than 4 months. So that the wives in the house will also have a fair share of their husbands. Umar ibn Khattab's, injazat, or his successes and his life, is something that we can all sit down and learn from. Furthermore, after Umar ibn Khattab had become the leader, he sat in his room, and then he was being said, he was heard saying, "Yabn al-Khattab, O son of Khattab," addressing himself, "Kunta wadi'an farafa'aka Allah." You are a very low person, and Almighty Allah uplifted you. Wa kunta dallan fahadaka Allah. Umar, you were a lost person, and Almighty Allah guided you. Wa kunta dhalilan fa'azzaka Allah. You were a weak person, and Almighty Allah empowered you. Thumma hamalaka ala riqab nas. Then the Almighty Allah made you the leader of the people. فَمَاذَا أَنْتَ قَائِلٌ لِرَبِّكَ غَدًا يَا Umar. Umar, what excuse do you have in front of the Almighty Allah tomorrow? All these things that the Almighty Allah has given you, what excuse do you have in front of the Almighty Allah? What are you going to tell the Almighty Allah? This is how Umar addresses himself. That is why he said, "Hasibu anfusakum qabla an tuhasabu." Judge yourselves before you are being judged. Wazinu a'malakum qabla an tuzana alaykum. And then weigh your deeds before they are being weighed for you. So as a leader of the community, someone by name Hafs ibn Abil As came to Umar ibn Khattab. And then he found Umar ibn Khattab eating. He was eating dry bread and meat that had been sun-baked. So some dry food. And Umar ibn Khattab said, "Yeah, Hafs, come and eat with us." And Hafs was a little bit reluctant. And Umar understood the whole game. He told him, "Hafs, why aren't you, joining me in eating?" He said, "Amir al-Mu'minin, this is your food." That's rough stuff, man, Amir al-Mu'minin. This food is going to make me sick. I'm going to go home, have very nice food to eat and stuff like that. And Umar said, If I want, Umar said, if I want, I'll have the best food in Medina. And I'll have the best of life. If I want, I'll make my boys slaughter a goat for me and make me a barbecue. And then I'll let them get some grapes and make some juice for me to drink. And I'll let them make me some fresh, soft bread for me to eat. But then, I leave all these things because there is a day that I'll stand in front of the Almighty Allah and I'll be questioned about it. He said there is a day that mothers will throw away their babies and pregnant women will have miscarriages and people will run around as if they are drunk. I'm scared of this day. What am I going to tell the Almighty Allah if I use all this food and eat them? In the 17th year of Hijrah, Amr Ramada, the year that there was a famine, Umar ibn Khattab ordered his boys to slaughter, a camel and then distribute the meat to the poor people who are suffering. Then in the morning he saw, some fresh, some intestines and some liver and some heart, the inner part of the very well prepared. And then he told his servant Aslam, where did you get this from? He said, Amir al-Mu'minin, the camel that you said we should slaughter, we prepared something for you. He said, oh, you give me the best part and then you give it the bones to the poor people? No, take this away from me. I'm not going to eat it. Get me bread and some grease. That's what I'm going to eat. Get me bread and grease. This is Umar ibn Khattab. His wife said, Amir al-Mu'minin, I want to get some sweets. He said, where will I get money for sweets for you? He said, but you are Amir al-Mu'minin. He said, whatever I get from the Baytul Mal is enough for a 3 square meal a day. Anything that is extra belongs to the Baytul Mal. So forget about sweets. He told his family, Ya Ahla Umar, be mindful, because the people are looking at you the same way cats look at meat. One day he went to where animals were grazing, and then he saw a very fat, huge camel. He said, whose camel is this? And he said, that is the camel of Abdullah ibn Umar. He said, oh, the camel of my son Abdullah ibn Umar. He said, where is he? Bring him here. He came. He said, Abdullah, ma hadha al-ibn, why this camel? What is this? He said, Amir al-Mu'minin, I'm just an ordinary citizen like everybody. I just had some money. I went to the market. I bought a camel and I brought it to a grazing area where everybody brings their animals to graze. He said, yes, but you have special treatment. He said, I don't have any special treatment. He said, you are my son. The people who want to please you, they will say, give way to the camel of the son of Amir al-Mu'minin. Give water to the camel of the son of Amir al-Mu'minin. Bring more food to the camel of the son of Amir al-Mu'minin. Then your camel will grow fatter and bigger. And other people's camels will not grow as fat as yours. Ya Abdullah, sell the camel and take all your capital and then return the profit to the Bayt al-Mal of Muslimin. He said, Labbaika ya abati, I've heard you. That is Umar ibn Khattab. Umar ibn Khattab radiyallahu anhu lived a life of simplicity. What is there left for me to say about Umar ibn Khattab? Or have I even really said anything at all concerning Umar ibn Khattab? This is what Sheikh Muhammad Hassan said when he was discussing Umar. He said, what is there left after having a 2-hour lecture on Umar? He said, what is there left to say about Umar ibn Khattab? And then he said, have I even said anything about Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu? This is who Umar ibn Khattab is. When he died, or before he died, and part of the reason or how he was killed, because Umar ibn Khattab was killed by a man named Fayruz Abu Lu'lu al-Majusi. When the Persian Empire was destroyed, and part of the ruling in Islam is that when you lose a war and then you are captured in war, you are turned into a slave. So some of these guys were captured and they didn't accept Islam, because we don't force you to accept Islam. but then they became slaves because they took weapons to fight the Muslim community. So this guy was brought to Medina, and then he was made a servant boy to forgetting this guy, subhanallah, Mughira ibn Shu'bah, a companion of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Came to Umar ibn Khattab with a complaint of his master, who is not a Muslim, has access to Amir al-Mu'mineen to even complain about his master. This is how the justice system in Islam was working. That irrespective of your class or your status, you have access to the court, you have access to Amir al-Mu'mineen. And Umar asked him, what brings you here? He said, I have a complaint about my master. He is overworking me. Umar said, okay, no problem. I'll speak to your master and see how best we can solve this issue. The young man expected Umar ibn Khattab to berate his master in front of him. But Umar ibn Khattab, no. So this young man was not happy that his master was not speaking in front of him. He went and then he built a knife that had 2 points. Sometimes you see in some movies, they said the sword of Sayyidina Ali had 2 points. It's not true. It's not true. Knife with 2 points. And then he spent 1 month smearing poison on the blade. He spent 1 month smearing poison on the blade. So he came into the masjid at Fajr. You know, sometimes even this time, even this era that we are here, with all the electricity, sometimes you don't even put your mind to the people who come to the masjid. True of us. True. And some few months ago, one of our imams in Patterson, New Jersey, was stabbed in Salah. So imagine even during that time, where they didn't have all this lighting system. So he dressed, had his turban, came into the masjid, and then he stood in the first saf. Umar said, Istawu, Allah Akbar. Fajr, and then he led the people in Salah. Second rak'ah, when everybody is, everybody is in the state of Salah, he just went and he stabbed Umar. Some of the narrations said he stabbed him twice. And because it's 2 points, each stab is two holes. And then when he stabbed, he twists the knife. And all they could hear was Umar saying, he's killing me, he's killing me. When they tried to pounce on him, to grab him, they didn't know he had a knife. So he stabbed 9 other people too. In the end, they threw a huge blanket on him. They were able to empower him, but then he ended up stabbing himself and then killing himself. So Umar, before he even fell, he dragged Abdurrahman bin Awf of Mughira ibn Shu'bah. He said, Alhamdulillah, I thank the Almighty Allah, who has caused my death in the hands of a man, a leverage. So okay, no problem. He said, okay, what we're going to do, and then some people said, Amir al-Mu'mineen, why don't you install your son, Abdullah ibn Umar, as the Khalifa? He said, if there's any goodness in this leadership, I've taken it for my family. If there's any bad in it, I've taken it, it's enough for my family. My family is not going to continue. Ali, just an observer who is going to learn from everybody. He's not part of the deliberations or the discussions or whatever you're going to discuss. He should just be there to observe what you're doing so that he learns. And then he told Abdullah bin Umar, go to al-Mu'mineen Aisha radiallahu anha. Tell her that Umar bin Khattab, don't tell her Amir al-Mu'mineen. Tell her Umar bin Khattab wants to be buried next to his 2 companions. Since Umar wants it, I've given it. After I'm dead, you've prepared my body. Ask her again. Maybe she's shy when I'm alive. Maybe she might change her mind after I'm dead. After his death, he asked her again, and she said, I've already given my approval, so no problem. But before Umar died, Uthman said, I entered into Umar bin Khattab, into his room, and I found his head on the lap of his son, Abdullah ibn Umar. Almighty Allah sees my head on the floor. Khattab said, Waili wa wailu ummi illam yakfir li rabbi. He said, woe unto me, and even woe unto my mother if the Almighty Allah doesn't forgive me. This is someone that the Prophet Muhammad told him, you are guaranteed Jannah. But some of us today feel that if we do not enter Jannah, then Jannah doesn't exist. We are so daily salah is going to enter. Who saw the Prophet, believed in him, walked with the Prophet, did everything, they sacrificed their lives, their monies, their energies for the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He guarantees them Jannah. What we want to do. Jannah for us to enter. Some people came and they said, Umar ibn Khattab, don't worry. The Prophet trusted you before he died. Abu Bakr Siddiq trusted you before he died. And the community trusts you now. So you are dying a good man. Umar looked at them, he said, the delusional one is the one that you deceive. You think Jannah belongs to me? I can do with it whatever I want. This is who Umar ibn Khattab is. And this is his life. We are going to touch only some points. We're going to discuss the life of Umar ibn Khattab. It's a lesson for us. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين والسلام عليكم. If you have some questions, we'll take them.